Want to grow your Etsy store into a full-time business but aren't quite sure how to do it? Then this video, as featured in 2024's Etsy Digital Summit, is for you. Let's get started. Hi, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about how to quit your day job and become a full-time Etsy entrepreneur. Today, you'll learn all about how to set yourself up for maximum success as a small business owner, and I'm so excited to share this information with you. My name is Jess from the YouTube channel Insights by Jess. I've reviewed thousands of Etsy listings to identify real-time tips and strategies to help build bestseller listings. I've been an Etsypreneur since 2009, and I'm also a mom of 5. A few years ago, when I was pregnant with my youngest, I had a near-fatal heart attack. We decided to sell our house and everything we owned and travel overseas in search of a more peaceful, slower lifestyle. We also brought along our sweet St. Bernard Penny. Through this crazy chain reaction of events, my YouTube channel Insights by Jess was born, and now I get to be here sharing what I've learned with you. So, let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about everything you need to plan and prepare to be an official small business owner and how to know when you're ready. Things to consider before becoming an Etsypreneur, financial needs and budgeting, making a full-time plan that fits your situation, and business requirements, taxes, and other legal stuff that you need to know. There's also a free worksheet and printable guide that you can access at the end of this presentation as well to make all of your planning easier, so be sure to stick around for that. Section 1. Things to consider before becoming an Etsypreneur. The idea of being your own boss is very appealing, and the freedom that comes with being an entrepreneur is exciting. So let's talk first about some of the things that you should consider before taking that leap so that you can be sure you're ready and willing to do what it takes for success. First of all, you should have an open Etsy store that is already generating at least some sort of sales. A proof of concept is an idea that works, so you're testing your idea and making sure it works. In this case, having an Etsy store with products that already sell would be your proof of concept. Establishing your Etsy store and building your sales up before quitting your current employment gives you time to do several things. For one, it helps you make sure that your products are high quality. 2, it allows you time to create an Etsy SEO strategy that helps build visibility. It also helps you put together images that get attention. And find new products in case yours isn't selling. And this one is important because this may take time. We don't always have a winning product the very first time we start selling. And lastly, it helps you establish some sort of stable Etsy sales before losing your steady paycheck and potential benefits. Once you know that you have a great product that people are willing to purchase and give you their money for on a fairly consistent basis, you greatly increase the odds of business success. Another thing to consider is whether being an entrepreneur suits your personality and fits with your lifestyle, or at least with your life goals. Entrepreneurs need to be hardworking self-starters who are very responsible with their time. This is probably the most difficult part of being an entrepreneur because we don't always know how good we're going to be at sticking to a schedule and being efficient with our time until we're actually sitting at home with work to be done and Netflix is calling our name. Some things you might want to ask yourself can include, am I good at sticking to deadlines? Do you stay on pace? Can I keep myself fairly focused on my work? Do I have a place where I can get my work done without a lot of distractions? Am I good at completing projects, or do I tend to jump around from thing to thing? Guilty. And can I maintain a good work ethic when I feel unmotivated? Take a fair, honest look at your sense of motivation and your work ethic, because when our shop sales are low and we're tired and we're burned out and we're frustrated, that can become very demotivating. And a lot of times it's that strong work ethic and that dedication that really pulls us through and keeps us doing what we need to do so that our Etsy store stays running smoothly. The next thing to consider is that being an entrepreneur means being responsible for 100% of your income, taxes, and healthcare. So when you decide to quit your job and focus on your own business full time, you lose access to a lot of these benefits that you may not really think about on a day-to-day basis. Some of the workplace benefits that you may no longer have access to when you work for yourself are things like a steady paycheck, and that includes sick pay and vacation time. You also lose automatic tax withdrawals, automatic Social Security withdrawals. A lot of times when we get a paycheck, those things are deducted for us. And then, of course, there's also employer-provided healthcare plans and retirement plans. And we will go over all of these in more detail later on in this presentation. But the biggest thing to understand for your own mental preparation is that there really isn't stability when you're an entrepreneur. So you have to build as much stability as you possibly can for yourself. The next thing to consider is that you need to be flexible and you always want to have a backup plan. I've been an entrepreneur, for example, since 2009, and in 2013, my husband joined me to help grow our business full-time. And throughout that time, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and things have happened, like heart attacks, for example, that we never could have predicted. So one of the things that we've really learned throughout the years is that you have to be very flexible, and you have to have a lot of backup plans. So here are some backup plans that you may want to consider before becoming a full-time Etsypreneur. First of all, you never want to put all of your eggs in one basket. You don't want to rely on Etsy as your sole source of income because things can happen and jeopardize that income, and then you're stuck. So you want to diversify your income beyond Etsy to other platforms. Next, you want to set firm boundaries with yourself regarding how much savings you need to have before becoming a full-time entrepreneur, and decide in advance what you are and are not willing to spend that savings for. And we will talk a lot more about what type of savings you want to prepare yourself for later in this presentation as well. The third backup plan you want to consider is how you want to re-enter the workforce if or when things get really bad. Next, if you're selling physical goods or print-on-demand products, for example, you want to try and find alternate suppliers and or vendors for your products. And this is important even if you're not selling full-time, but it's something that we don't often do until we have to. But things can change with our vendors. They may change their inventory, or they may increase their prices, or they may run out of stock of something. So having an idea in advance of who to use instead or how you're going to manage those situations can really help de-escalate the stress involved with making those decisions on a last minute as needed basis. And then lastly, you want to create a backup plan for who is going to help you if you get sick or if you get injured. How is the business still going to run? You're still going to need to answer customer questions. You're going to need to fulfill orders in many cases, and you want to decide in advance how that's going to work out if something is to happen and you get the most horrible flu and can't get out of bed for 3 days, for example. So having these backup plans can really be beneficial in terms of just mitigating disasters and setting yourself up for as much success as possible. And that brings us to section 2, financial needs and budgeting. So before you can make Etsy your full-time business, you need to know if you can make it work financially. And the first step of this process is, of course, creating a budget with all of your monthly expenses. You might already have a budget, but for the sake of being a thorough guide or a thorough presentation, let's cover some of the basics of budgeting. So first, you want to make a list of everything you spend money on each month and be as detailed as possible. So some of the things that I included were, of course, all of our family's bills and expenses and things like that. Fund money for activities and outings, and this was important because I wanted to have some flexibility. You know, we had kids, so I wanted to be able to do fun things and not have to stress about how to make that work financially. I also included money for eating out. There's also savings for holidays and birthday gifts, and this one was really the biggest lifesaver because I totaled up what I wanted to spend on each child and each adult for their birthdays and for Christmas and for every holiday I could think of. And then I totaled that all up and split it by 12 months. And I saved that money every single month, so I never had to worry about having enough money for Christmas, for example, even if sales were kind of sucky leading up to the holiday. I also set aside clothing savings for when kids outgrew clothes and needed new shoes or whatever they needed, and retirement savings because, like I've mentioned already, and we'll talk more about in a second, retirement is all our sole responsibility when we're an entrepreneur. So if I don't save for retirement, I don't get to retire. And then there's also emergency savings for things like car issues, a flat tire, things like that. And lastly, charity giving, because I always wanted to be giving at least something back, so I made that part of our budget as well. The next step is adjusting your budget to replace work benefits. There are also expenses that are typically covered, at least partially, by the company that you work for. So you're going to want to account for those expenses in your monthly budget as well. Some of these include things like health insurance, healthcare plans and/or discounts, vacation and sick days, college saving plans for kids, the income taxes that are already deducted, and as I mentioned a few times now, retirement savings plans and contributions. And once you add all of these various expenses into your budget, you will have a better idea of how much money you need to make each month as an Etsy small business owner. So the next step is actually making a plan to leave the workforce and begin working for yourself full time. So this part of the plan looks a little bit different for everyone because every person and every family has different situations. But there are some steps that are fairly standard in terms of a process you can follow to plan ahead and set yourself up for maximum success. So the first part of that plan is figuring out what you currently make in sales each month on average and what your profit margin is. So you might already know this information, but just in case you don't, a simple way to figure out what your monthly sales are is to add up all the monthly sales for the past year or for a set number of months if you haven't been selling for a year, and then divide by the number of months. So for example, let's say these are our monthly sales for each month, and we're going to use 6 months because we're going to go with easy math. So if we add all of these up, we get approximately $45,001. And if we divide that by 6 months, we get an average monthly sales of $7,500. So to find our profit margin next, what we're going to do is subtract our expenses from our total sales to find the profit amount. So for example, our June sales, let's say, are $6,740, and our June expenses are $5,392. And that gives us a profit amount of $1,348. The next step is to divide that profit amount by the total sales amount. The profit, $1,348, divided by the total sales of $6,740 gives us a profit margin of 0.2. And to see that as a percentage, all we have to do is multiply that by 100. So 0.2 times 100 is 20%. So now we know that we have an average monthly sales of $7,500 and a profit margin of about 20%. Essentially, to be able to work for ourselves full-time and sell on Etsy full-time, we want this profit amount here to be enough to cover our monthly expenses, right? If we are not quite at that point and they can't quite cover our expenses yet, that brings us to part 2. We want to create a sales growth plan. So we know how to grow our store and what to focus on and about how long it's going to take us to get to that point where those sales do cover our monthly expenses. And if your sales already cover your monthly expenses, then you don't need to do this part. So a simple way to create your sales growth plan is first divide your average monthly sales by the number of listings in our shop. So if we have 7,500 sales, and let's say we have 300 Etsy listings in our store, we're just going to go ahead and divide 7,500 by those 300 listings, and that gives us an answer of $25. That $25 is the average monthly value of each listing in our store. Now, this is a super simple way of doing it. There's more precise and more complex ways of doing this to get much more precise numbers, but this is a perfect way to see approximately how much value your listings bring to your store on average. So for step 2, we are going to set an ideal sales goal for how many sales we need to cover our expenses. So let's say that to cover our monthly expenses, we're going to want to make $9,000 in sales each month on average, and that will give us enough profits to cover all of our bills. This is 20% more than the $7,500 that we're currently making in Etsy sales. Step 3, now that we have a goal, is to set a realistic deadline or completion date for when we want to reach that goal. So for our example, we're going to say we want to reach this goal by next quarter, and each quarter has 4 months. So the next step of our plan is figuring out how many new listings we want to add to our shop in order to reach this goal. So we already know that we have $25 average listing value and that our ideal sales goal is $9,000 a month. And that tells us that we need 360 listings in our shop. That means we only need 60 new listings added to our shop in order to make that goal a reality. So the last step then is determining how many listings we should create each week to achieve that goal before our deadline. Since we said we wanted to complete it in 1 quarter, which is about 13 weeks, that tells us we need to have 4.6 new listings per week. So just to make it easy, we can set a goal that we are going to add about 5 listings to our shop each week to reach that ideal sales goal of $9,000 before our 4-month deadline. The next part of making a plan to go full-time is to set aside enough funds to cover our business's legal costs and registration fees. And you can research ahead of time to find a general idea of what those costs may be. We're going to talk more about the legal requirements in the next section of this presentation. That brings us to part 4. You want to establish a savings fund for your financial security. And this is probably the most important part of any plan to become a small business owner or an entrepreneur. So you may have heard this already, but approximately 20% of businesses fail within their first year of being a business, and 50% of businesses fail within 5 years. The biggest reason most business owners say they go out of business is just not having the funds they needed to do everything that they needed to do. So that makes having a savings fund very, very important because it establishes a sense of security and cushion that you are absolutely going to need at some point in your business journey. So the first step is figuring out how much savings you're going to want to need for your safety net. For example, I set up an emergency savings fund first for emergencies like car accidents, health accidents, to cover our insurance deductibles, flat tires, or other types of emergency disasters. And then I also set up a living expense savings. And this is the one that most entrepreneurs or small business owners are going to tell you that it's important to have this. So this is going to be at least 3 months of your living expenses or 3 months of monthly bills. And if at all possible, saving 6 to 12 months is better. So once you have an idea of how much money you will need before moving to Etsy full-time, you can create a plan to set aside some money each month. So once you have all of the savings that you need and everything is saved up, you can move on to the next step, the last step of actually registering your business and handling all of your taxes and other legal stuff. I do want to point out that it is important to talk to a financial advisor and or an accountant before you make any big legal decisions or quit your job. That being said, part 1 of establishing your business is incorporating your business. There are actually 4 main business types that you can consider. So the first type is a sole proprietorship, and that is the simplest form of business to create, but it also has the least protection. The next one is a partnership. Partnership is very similar to a sole proprietorship, but everything is split among 2 or more partners. Then you have the LLC, Limited Liability Company, and this is the most common among small business owners. It's affordable to set up, and it separates your business assets from your personal assets, which is very, very important. Lastly, you have a corporation. This could be a C Corp, or if you see a business that says Inc. at the end, then you know that this is a corporation. This is probably the most complicated business structure to set up, but it also gives you the most protections. Now, when you're going to register your business or incorporate your business officially, there are some affordable services that can actually help you register your business legally, and they can answer a lot of these questions that you may have. There are also other services, but these are probably the biggest and most reputable ones. So the next part of establishing your business legally is protecting your business name and assets. So some of the ways that you can go about protecting your business is registering your business name. Another way of protecting your business is by establishing a trademark. Now, this can protect your logo, your artwork, your name, or even a specific phrase. This is going to be really important if you have future plans to establish to Amazon, for example. It's also helpful to have a trademark if you want to protect your brand as it grows. Next, you can consider registering your domain name. So this is not required. You don't need to have a domain name or a website essentially for your business, but it does help establish business presence and it does add more credibility. You can also use this to build your Shopify store or have your own website that you sell on as well. Next, you want to set up your business insurance. For certain businesses, it is legally required to have disability and Social Security or unemployment insurance, especially in cases if you have employees or if you set your business up as a certain structure that pays you as an employee. So this is potentially going to be required, and that's another reason you want to speak with a lawyer or legal representative before registering your business so that you know you're choosing the best option for your needs. Other optional insurance types include general liability, product liability, and commercial property. Another important part of establishing your business is opening a business bank account. So there are many reasons to separate your personal and business finances. For one, it makes preparing and filing your taxes much easier when all of your transactions are separated. It also helps protect your personal assets in case of a lawsuit or if you have a tax dispute with the IRS, which does occasionally happen. It also helps to build your business's credit score for things like loans or credit cards and other perks that you may get when your business has an established credit score. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you're filing the proper business taxes. So each business structure has its own requirements for how to file taxes properly. And there are important differences between how you would file your personal taxes and how you would file business taxes. So this is something that you do want to research and learn a lot about. Etsy partners with QuickBooks and TurboTax to help simplify both your accounting and your taxes. TaxJar helps with managing your state taxes automatically. There's also H&R Block or local accountant or CPA services that can give you personalized help with your taxes, and that can be really beneficial because they can go over your taxes and they can help you identify deductions that you may qualify for and help make sure that you're doing everything the right way and there's not any major oversights or anything that you're missing or doing incorrectly. The SBA site, which is the Small Business Administration, also has many resources for small businesses, including tax information. You can actually go onto their website and find out what taxes are required in your state that you live in and approximately how many taxes you may need to pay, and really just be able to plan ahead so much better. Okay, I've thrown a lot of information at you today, but don't worry because I'm about to make this all a lot easier for you. I put all of this into a free in-depth planning guide for you. It's over 30 pages long and it even includes worksheets to help you tackle each of these steps along the way of this process. So you can grab that at this link here. There's also clickable links to all of the resources on sites that I've mentioned throughout this presentation, as well as a couple of other ones that didn't make it in for time's sake. So to recap what we've learned today, we talked about things to consider before becoming an Etsypreneur, all the financial needs and budgeting, creating your full-time plan so you can start selling on Etsy as a small business owner, and business requirements, taxes, and legal stuff. So now you have all the resources you need to get a great jump start on being your own business and really making Etsy a full-time source of income. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you learned so much today. You can find me on YouTube at Insights by Jess. I am always answering lots of questions in the comments of my videos and on my community page, so that is where I am almost every single day. And I do also post tips occasionally on Instagram. Don't forget to grab your free resource on your way out. I am wishing you all so much success and lots of Etsy sales. Thank you and have a great day.